Hey, it's Friday. Today I wanted to go over something that you can't really see too well there. Let me figure out if I can get to the title more better. Although who really cares? But something that I mention frequently, that people talk to me frequently, is kind of represented in this chart. This is a Gartner white paper that we have licensed, so you can get it for free if you lead gen yourself. As always, if you click on that little eye somewhere up there, you can go to a link to it and you can download it for free. And I'll also, if you go all the way to the end of the video, there'll be another little booklet of this, a little thing that you can click on to download it. But let's start again with this chart that comes up a lot, or the sentiment that's expressed in this chart, and that is, if you look at it, and let me get my little. I forget if is there a laser that you can use in here? That would be a lot cooler, but we'll just use a pin instead of a laser. I should find, I think if I open it in some other thing, we can get a laser, but whatever, don't matter. But what you can see here is the way this chart is done right here is that this is an interesting way of doing a chart, but they've done a survey of, down here you can see it's like 133 people, which is fine. I always say with an analyst or a Gartner survey, it's okay if the N is a little low, because it tends to be, I don't know, I'm kind of sort of assuming here, but it tends to be a pretty filtered, qualified set of people for it to be talking with analysts. I sure hope so. I hope they don't just like pop up some web form at cio.com and just rely on people filling it out and doing things like that. But let's assume it's good. Enough of the end. So anyways, what's going on this chart is, as you can see down here, it's a little, maybe a little hard to read, but they want people to go over what the challenges they're going to face in the next 12 months are. And now I forget the date that they did this. If it's a 2020 survey, it probably, let's see, we can go down. It's always good to check on this stuff, right? But you can go down to the methodology and see like, the Worldwide Survey is going to online. So this is from basically the summer of 2018. So 12 months from that would be this past summer. So it would be interesting to go and revisit this. But as with a lot of charts, right? A lot of what's going on here is that it's just representative. It's good wallpaper for anecdotes and qualitative thinking that a lot of people have, including myself. But getting back to it, what's going on this chart is they're doing an interesting double chart here of listing the blue stuff, and then I guess they make this one orange here just to kind of like highlight that it's the number one thing. But these blue ones are basically like the percentage that ranked that item as number one, which is interesting, right? And so what you end up seeing there is the number one problem in the summer of 2018 that people were anticipating encountering over the next 12 months was managing technical debt. Now, something that we obviously discuss a lot, right? Like even yesterday we were talking about the need to do test-driven development and things like that. And one of the primary reasons you do that, or I should say, the second long-term, the long-term payoff, the short-term payoff of test-driven development is you're testing your software. But the long-term payoff is that you avoid as much technical debt as possible. And you can also start addressing it, or to use the metaphor, paying it down. Anyhow, so that is like, it's only by few percentage points. I don't know what the margin of error is, but when things are 1 to 2 percentage points close, I figure they're basically tied. But the other thing that comes up all the time is I don't think my staff is up to the challenge, and I also know that it will be difficult to get them to that point. I think really, even putting it that way, I think more of what people, when they talk about this, mean is like, I don't think they're capable of it, and it's going to be too hard to get them capable. And we don't have enough money to hire people who already know how to do it, because we don't spend money on stuff like that, you find in lots of non-tech company organizations. So the blue part, right, like the kind of wider thing here that they've done, which I think is a clever way of doing some data analysis, is they've added up, added up's probably the wrong word, but this is what people have responded as it's in their top 5 things, the sum of rank 1 to 5, which now that I think about it, anyways, I have to think about what that means, but it's something obviously that is of common high concern to them, and that's insufficient skills / resources. Now, I think resources there probably I wonder if that's human resources, which is always a quaint way of talking about people, but whatever. So again, this comes up over and over again, that if you want to move to, you want to improve the way you're doing your software so that you can improve the way you're running your business, you want to get a platform in place, whether it's a Tanzu application server that's a platform as a service to handle a lot of the things for you, or you want to go kind of like you want to get raw Kubernetes in there and manage that as well. You think like, people aren't up to snuff for this kind of thing. So what this paper does is, one, kind of, showing you that conclusion, but it also goes over, there's two areas that I think are fun to look at or helpful. And that is, they kind of do an analysis of what they think the critical skills are, right? And you can see there's, if you look through a lot of these, right? Most of these are what I would call pretty generic skills. And these are all operation skills as well, right? So that's another point to look at. But most of these, right, are just skills that you would have if you just sort of like remove the word cloud from several of these. This one is somewhat unique. So let's write that down there. Understanding distributed systems, sorta unique. All right. And then if we come here, obviously unique, but that's normal. Let's see, if we take out cloud from here, that's just like something that everyone does. That's something everyone does. Scripting and integrating with REST APIs, I don't know. Sure. And then, configuration management stuff. So the general area of all of these critical things, as my younger daughter is agreeing to in the background, if you can hear. I mean, these are like the skills that any operations or infrastructure people need to be doing. So when I look through these skill lists, one, to kind of calm people down about freaking out about the skills problem that they have. Like, all of these things here are like, stuff that people do anyways, your operations people. Now, what's different is that it's just a different set of tools, often a different set of thought technologies, if you will, to use I think a Merlin Mann term that I've stolen and use a lot. But you're using a different set of tools and sometimes using them in a different way, but accomplishing the same general stuff, right? That's been going on. It might be automated, it might be sped up. You might talk about service level objectives instead of service level availability, and all sorts of things like that. You're using Kubernetes instead of maybe traditional virtualization. You might be configuring things, through YAML files and configuration maps and secret maps instead of scripts that you have from the Puppet and Chef and Salt World and things like that. But you're doing the same sorts of things. And just as you had to learn those tools and skills, it's just learning a new set of tools and things that you do. So, I think there are dramatically different things, as I talked about several kind of, episodes ago in the, thinking about going to a platform as a product mentality. It's a different way of operating as an operations person. So that's kind of a larger leap. But I think the first thing to take away from this is that, like, it's not, the skills that people need to have are not unknowable, right? You got a handy dandy list right here to kind of start with. But also they're just normal things that people would learn. Like, they don't need to learn, how to perform magic or some entirely new, like, way of typing, right? It's not like, we're almost done reading the first book in the Kingkiller Chronicles by Patrick Rufus, right? And all the little magicians in there have to go to the school and learn how to hold like multiple ideas in their head at once, which is a strange skill. But in order to manage Kubernetes or develop software in a more agile way, you don't have to be able to hold two contradictory ideas in your head at once and learn the names of all these mystic things and do stuff. It's just computers. And skills that have been done before. So it's totally possible to train up people to do these sorts of things, which brings us to the advice that I think is quite good advice of how to tactics of doing this, right? And I'm going to go over three of them. I mean, I think there's a tactical thing, right? Using the old, now maybe even unattributable sort of Adrian Cockcroft thing, right? So the main thing is, like, you probably have plenty of people that you already have in there that you can train and change around and kind of get to fill this skills gap instead of having to go out and hire everyone, right? And the Cocroft thing is he used to work at Netflix, and he would still gives a lot of talks, gives talks about like, here's how you operate things. And some Fortune 500 exec came up and said like, well, that's all nice, but like, you're Netflix and you can hire all these best and brightest people. So this is a very demeaning way of thinking about your staff, but we're not able to find that kind of staff. And so it's only good for you tech companies. But as Cocroft said, we hired them from you. And what that means is, the staff you have, given the right context, the right training, kind of shuffling them into the right area, they'll probably be sufficient because they were good enough to be poached away from you and go to work at Netflix and other places. They all started off just as people who need to learn things anyways. So with that mindset, I think the recommendations that you have here are basically, they reduce down to using pairing as a way to spread knowledge, doing training, right? Like learning. And then also I think another thing is that we do a lot of in Tanzu land and Pivotal Labs world is to really find out ways to actually learn by doing, right? Not just to do the training and things like that. And pairing is learning by doing, but let's start with just kind of like basic training, right? So, you've got your list up here of the kinds of skills areas that you want your staff to have that they probably will need, right? So you're going to need to do a little bit of planning ahead of like what kind of skills are needed, right? What do we lack? I mean, presumably, I guess this is an interesting thought exercise to go through. If you look at these survey results, if you're answering that you have insufficient skills, hopefully you know what skills you're insufficient in instead of just kind of like making a broad generalization. But I think, it's hard to kind of know, as they say, what you don't know. And I think starting with the learning by doing, or as they say, learn by deploying and collaborating. But what I and we tend to recommend with people is you should really find some small projects to work on that are still business facing. Like I think the simplest one, if you're in retail, is like a store finder app, or if you're in banking, like an ATM finder app. Things that are like not really regulated, so you don't have to worry about auditors and security, and that are minor, but actually do have real customers or people or users using them. But find some small application like this and come up with a team of, 2 to 4 people, and actually use whatever platform, whether it's a Kubernetes or a Tanzu application service or whatever, but have this small team of people use these new technologies to kind of like modernize a moribund or a forgotten application, and like write down the skills that you're insufficient in, right? Like use this actual application that's kind of, off somewhere that if it screws up, the blast radius is contained, there's no problem. But if you're successful, one, you've addressed some applications or an application that is kind of like not much has been happening with it, but it's allowing you to really start catalog and learn what you don't know, right? Now you've come up with a list of known unknowns, which is where you need to start with if you think that you have insufficient skills. Then you can move on, to the other 2 areas that they go over here, which is training and pairing, right? Now, this is where doing a small series of projects, as so much, right? Starting small is always vital, and it comes up all the time in the discussions that I have. But you want to start small by experimenting and learning with, your simple applications like a store finder thing. And then take that initial team, right? And you've got, like I said, have 2 to 4 people. And you've got 2 to 4 people that you can seed into other projects, right? So then they can start pairing on other projects, and they can start still discovering those known unknowns, but they can start spreading that knowledge to other people and training them up and so forth and so on. Like the old shampoo commercial, right? I recommended it to someone, and then they used it, and then they recommended it to someone, all of that stuff. I should look up that commercial one day. I remember it vividly from my, you might be an 80s kid if upbringing. So that's the other thing, is to really think about, as I've talked about some time ago, like how you're using pairing as a way to not only ensure the existing process that you're doing, but to help scale up and spread the change that you have. And then, I think I'm always surprised at like people talking about a lack of skills. or I shouldn't say not surprised. I'm always wickedly unsurprised at like, the next question is like, well, how much time and budget do you spend annually training your staff? And not just sort of like, giving them lame old corporate training that they can optionally go in and read, but like actual training of technical things. And definitely not stuff like, if you see water on the floor, you need to go alert the facilities people so there's not a dangerous slip. I don't know. That's out of my area. Maybe that kind of stuff is necessary and people need a lot of training, but not that kind of training, but actual training where you're being exposed to and you're learning how to do new things to kind of have that continuing education that you need. I think my suspicion is that most organizations don't do that. And so it's kind of like, obviously you're going to have a skill problem. But I think if you come together with these three things, right? Let me go over to my my notes here to kind of show you, a summary of those things. I think that's how you start to address skills gaps that you have. And again, I think the idea that you're not going to switch over everything all at once, you have to accept that, right? You're as always going to have to start a lot smaller than you think. Just over the first like 3 or 6 months, you're probably going to do like 1 to 4 projects that are meaningful, right? Like there's always exceptions and things could go differently, but like don't set yourself up to fail with expectations. And then equally importantly, right, as you're learning what those known unknowns are, right, the skills that you lack and how to spread them out, like always look to adapt, right? Like apply that small batch loop of having a theory about how to address it with these three things here. And, if you think that like pairing people will address a skills gap, how are you going to measure it? I don't know, send out a survey and ask people if they feel confident that they know how they're doing things, and check that survey data every month, every 3 months, and see if your theory about how to address that skills gap is working or not. And if it's not working, try something different. Kind of tune what you're having and always adapt to the way that you're doing things. So speaking of all of this, we have a great way of helping you address this stuff. There's actually several things. Let me bring up a window of it so I can walk you through it. One, especially if you're in the operation area, I've got a couple of episodes where I go over, if you remember talking with Bosky and other people, but where I go over, how you kind of transition the mindset of a VI administrator to doing Kubernetes. And we've got all sorts of stuff over at Tanzu TV talking about and demoing doing Kubernetes stuff. So there's definitely plenty of lecture series that you can get from us. If you go to tanzu.vmware.com/developer, you can check that out. But also we have some great resources for Kubernetes over at Kube Academy. All free. Many of them you don't even have to sign up for, but that's a good place to start with training and kind of doing lectures, right? Just go to kubeacademy.com. And also, if you're interested in getting some more hands-on help, one thing that that's sort of mentioned in the report, that Gartner report there, which again, you can get a free copy of. If you haven't downloaded it already, just go to the end of this video, the last 20 seconds, and there'll be a link to it. Or if you go to cote.io/Tanzu Talk, you can find the show notes, like right down here, and go check them out. But another thing, in being frank and open with you as a vendor, right, is all of us vendors are so eager for you to like buy stuff from us, right? And if you're at a large organization, we're talking over a multiple of years, lots of money that you're paying us, right? I mean, sure. And so to your advantage, right? Like obviously what you're going to get in return, the ROI on spending this lots of money is going to be fantastic because you're going to get technology that's totally worth it and accelerates your business growth, helping you remain competitive in these trying times of competition and headwinds so you can generate your own tailwinds, and software's eating the world. All of that stuff, which is fantastic and certainly true. But also what you'll find from us vendors is we are almost tripping over ourselves to set up some internal training and lecture series, which we'll probably do for free if you can sweet talk your salespeople, especially if you're kind of like actually express genuine interest in becoming a long-term partner with us. But I do a fair amount of these things on the kind of like softer managerial things that we do. A lot of my coworkers do these kind of internal conferences. Again, you can see a sample if you go to tanzu.tv. You can see all sorts of things that we do there. But you can get a tremendous amount of free training from vendors who are interested in working with you, especially if you're coming up to renewing or expanding the contracts or the subscriptions that you have. That's a good point of leverage to ask, is like, we'd like to work more with you, but we need some help with spreading the word about it and getting people trained up. And chances are very high that your vendors will want to retain you, and they'll lavish a lot of training on you. So you should definitely ask them about that. Now, speaking of that, if you're interested, you can always email me for more of this stuff if you email me at cotem@vmware.com. I don't know who this Cotem is, this COTEM at VMware.com, but I get all of their email, so it's an effective way to communicate with me. I'm assuming that it's someone like, Christopher Odom, or it might be, Charlize Odom. I'll have to look up who these Odoms are. I'm not familiar with them. Who they are. But again, I get all their emails, so you can email me at cotem.vmware.com. Also, if you're interested, if you don't really want to talk to me, if you go to cote.pizza, there's or the show notes here, but you can find a way to sign up for software development office hours and kind of start to explore finding out your known unknowns and addressing that skills gap that everyone's all worried about. So once again, if you want to get access to that paper, that Gartner paper that I talk with, you just wait till the end of the video here, and you'll see in the, over here, maybe I'll even put it in now. That would be kind of fun. Over here, you can just sort of go like, boop, and click on it, and it'll take you to a link to download that paper. And with that, we'll see everyone next time. Bye-bye.